We're on. We got there. Hold
Fucking
on here
hell.
just in case. Hey guys, welcome back to the Spates What a Lad podcast. Another Dance in France preview show for you here. And man, we've been talking up these quarterfinals from the start of these episodes. And man, did they deliver the best weekend of rugby I think I can ever remember. Four of the most even games you could get. Unbelievable atmosphere and all pretty much going down to the very last play. Incredible weekend, so good. Some heartbreakers for some of the countries, but again, while I'm here, joined by the legends, Searley from Searley Talk Sport, and of course, Jake the Snake Atkins. I went through the picks from last week, boys. I think me and you, Jake, we only got one. Searley, I believe you got two. So, mate, what did you make of the round? You're the tipping guru.
Oh, mate, it was just chaos, wasn't it? Like straight away from that Argentina game, it was just caught us all by surprise. I think, Jimmy, you had Argentina, didn't you? So
Yeah, that was the only one I got right, unbelievably. It was probably the
yeah,
least confident I was as
yeah,
well.
well played. But even that game was chaos, right? The numbers were falling off the jerseys. Oh, the ref got sniped. It was chaos, man. The old Pied Piper, Jaco Piper, he couldn't last the 80 minutes. Yeah, it was kind of that set the tone for what was about to happen for the rest of the weekend. And like, whoever said international rugby was dying, that was the perfect dose just to get everyone back on board. And it's great to see New Zealand. We are pretty bandwagony when it comes to fans, and now it's just all black fever. Like 6 weeks ago, it was up the wires everywhere you went. Now it's full ABs, and the lads deserve it. So it's unreal.
Yeah, man, what a weekend. And you mentioned Yako. He jumped out of it early because, man, some of these other refs who've played out the 80 are copping it way more than he did. So he's probably a very, very smart man. But we'll get to that first game, Wales versus Argentina, 29-17. Wales looked like they're all over them, Snake. RG hung in there, and then RG sort of took control in that last 20.
Yeah, exactly, Jim. Man, this game started like a house on fire, lads, didn't it? Like, I think both teams, we maybe didn't expect them to play much attacking rugby. We sort of spoke in the preview this might be a sort of set piece and penalty dominated game, but like didn't end up being the case. They both came out shooting from the hips straight away. For me, the straight away one of the first plays that we saw was Argentina. They set up for an exit. They set up into like a box kick formation. And then straight away they like called the space in from the edge, cancelled the play, shifted to the edge and moved into a counter-attack formation, and kind of felt like a slap around the face. It wasn't something I was expecting to see from either of these sides, but man, I was absolutely buzzing to see it. And the same from Wales. We saw them play from a lot deeper than we've seen them play at the rest of the tournament. Man, they were running nice attacking shape in their own half. First phase, they were having a go. We've not seen them do a lot of that. Dan Bigger was getting the ball back out from behind the midfielders, turning the corner, trying to get into that 13 channel. Late departure from the backs on the outside, trying to expose Argentina in that like 13, 14 channel. It really, really started well. There was that little period in the middle where the game sort of did go to more of what we expected, where it was a bit of a set piece wrestle, some penalties and stuff. But Argentina coming up big in the end, with finishing it off with a lovely intercept play from the old dog. Still had enough in the legs to bolt under the sticks.
Yeah, and what a play, and what a celebration from RGA
Oh,
after the game, man. It was like a party. It was like they'd won the World Cup. They were so stoked, which was cool to see. What did you make of the game, Shirley?
Yeah, pretty much the same as what Snakey said. Like, there were some big momentum shifts throughout that one. I thought Wales kind of had it wrapped up early, and then Argentina, they're just one of those sides, like, if you give them a sniff, they're fueled so much by passion, and
Yeah.
once they get their tails up, they're incredibly hard to stop. So, well done to them. Like, I've been really critical of them throughout this World Cup, so they've certainly silenced me because they've hit their straps at the right time. I will say, though, after watching that game back compared to the others, it did appear to be the weaker of the quarterfinals, but the matchup was perfect, wasn't it? So it was still a really quality game that I enjoyed watching. And yeah, it's not often that you'd get up at 4 a.m. on a Sunday morning to watch Wales Argentina and leave it really happy with the quality of the game. So I think
Yeah,
that's a testament to the clash right there.
mate, 100%. And you mentioned the quality. I think we've sort of previewed that two really clear games, which were much higher level than the others. I think we saw that I think the games were still really entertaining, but just the level of intensity in this next game, obviously the All Blacks versus Ireland, like you said, against Argentina, Wales, there was a definite clear step up in intensity, and man, this game had everything. So who wants to start on this one? All Blacks versus Ireland. We'll go to you, Searley, because what a game.
Yeah, that was crazy. Like, I was speaking to people after, from the moment Aaron Smith kicked that ball in the 77th minute, I don't think I sat down for the next hour. Even after the game, I was pacing around. I had tears in my eyes at the end of it just because
Oh,
of the roller coaster that it was, and just, I guess, the relief for the boys. Like, we spoke about taking on Ireland, but in a quarter final, like, it would be so disappointing to lose a quarter, but not lose to Ireland. So I think it was more just relief that, like, we're not going to hear this chat now about this potentially being statistically the worst All Black team or something, despite losing to the best team in the world. Like, that game had it all. What, 2 yellow cards? Man, we had our backs against the wall for long periods there. It looked like there were opportunities for the Irish. Every time they flung the ball wide, I got so nervous. But
yeah.
the boys just dug in some massive individual performances, which I'm sure we'll get to. But what a quality game of code. Like, I don't think we'll see two better quarterfinals in a World Cup, possibly ever. And this one was right up there. Just so proud of the All Blacks and the way they dug in to beat a bloody good Irish side. And a lot of people are saying they choked because they lost in another quarter final, but there's no way you could call it that. They were outstanding as well. It was just two really good teams going at it. And in the end, one had to win, and I'm glad it was the All Blacks.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, it so could have gone either way. Like,
Hmm.
it was literally a flip of a coin. I mean, if you look at all the little key moments, like the Geordie Barrett held up of a maul, like, that's almost impossible thing to do. Like, how do you get under that ball from that angle? Like, that was an incredible play. And to think that if he couldn't quite get his leg under that, then we probably lose that game. So there's so many little things in that game which obviously changed the result and have such a big swing on it. So it was incredible. But what do you make of it, Snake? You're very analytical. What'd you see?
Man, I like just I watching this game, I couldn't stop thinking like this was just such a pleasure to watch. I couldn't believe at times the level of like tactical and technical ability of some of the players at times. And like after the game, like as a neutral, like I was feeling really emotional, and I think it was for two reasons. One, and I knew this would happen before the game even kicked off. I knew that whoever lost the game, I was going to be gutted for them. At the end, whether it was Ireland had got over for the score and stolen the win, or the All Blacks, like they did, managed to shut them out in that 37 phase defence set, I knew whichever team lost, I was just going to be gutted for them. I really struggled to be happy for the All Blacks because I just felt so bad for the Ireland guys. And it would have been the exact opposite had Ireland stolen it. I wouldn't have been happy for them. I would have been gutted for the All Blacks just because neither of these teams deserves to go home at this stage in the tournament. Yeah, and I genuinely felt like quite emotional just at like how much of a privilege it was to watch rugby played at this level. Like the level that these guys are playing at, physically, but tactically, technically, it was such a pleasure to watch. And I obviously had no vested interest in it, so I can't imagine how the Irish fans in the stadium or you guys back home would have felt during the game with that emotional attachment to it as well. But both teams, and an absolute credit to, and the fans as well. Like both the sets of fans should be incredibly proud of these teams. Like I know the Irish fans will be absolutely gutted, but when the dust settles, I do hope that they appreciate how good this Ireland team was at this tournament, and they lost in one of the best matches I've ever watched, and there's no shame in that. And I hope they welcome the boys home as if they'd, I know they didn't get what they wanted, but as if they'd gone as far as they should have done, because they have nothing to be ashamed of, that Ireland team. Exactly like Searley said, they didn't choke. They didn't not turn up for the big game. Like they turned up heaps, and it was just a clash of two titan sides. And it was absolutely unbelievable to watch as a neutral, lads.
Oh, mate, Snake, good to hear you speak with so much emotion. I said you're usually the analytical guy, but look at you go. Like, you're welling up talking about the All Blacks versus Ireland game. It's so
We've won
good.
him over. We've won him over, Jimmy. We've won him
got him.
over.
He's a true emotional Kiwi fan. That's good stuff. But there's some other huge moments in this game. Obviously, the Bowden chip and chase, which led to Leicester's try, the Richie Moe show and go. Sam Whitelock getting over that ball, that jackal in the last, what was it, at the about 85th minute. Incredible scenes. Who really stood out for you, Searley?
Well, obviously, Sam Cane, Artie Savea, they've been getting the accolades, and deservedly so. Sam Cane was out of this world. Like, everyone's saying that's his best All Black performance. Mate, he probably hasn't dominated a footy field like that since bloody under sixes, eh? He was all over the place, and you could tell he just really had a point to prove. You could see it in the tunnel before the game when they shot to him. Like, he meant business.
He was ready, eh?
Yeah, man, there'd be some Irish forwards with some bruises on their bodies as a result of Sam Cane's shoulders. Then Artie Savea, like, he's just the complete package, isn't he? And those two complement each other so well when they're on their game. Like, they hunt in a pack together. Artie's got that skill set where he can do a box kick on his own try line, put it out past the 22, perfect ball flight. You think it was bloody Aaron Smith, but it was our number 8. Then he can score tries better than some wingers. Plus, he does the physical stuff so well. You mentioned Geordie, like, it's crazy. We mentioned last week, this time last year in this Irish series, he was playing fullback, hadn't worn the 12 jersey for the All Blacks. Now he's right up there. It's probably him, Bundy, and the South African midfield in terms of the best midfielders going around in the world at the moment. Yeah, you could go through and name so many people. You mentioned Whitelock before, like, he did that exact same thing in the Super Rugby final, right? Won that final breakdown at the ruck for a penalty. Like, people think that that stuff just happens. It doesn't happen by accident. He's so experienced. He's so classy. He knows exactly where to put his body in the big stages to get these wins. And I just thought all our tries, like, were so well calculated. They obviously identified back of the Irish line out, they'll D with a prop and a flanker, so let's send Richie down that channel with his speed. A beautiful pass off Aaron Smith. He's already outside the prop, straight through the gap. Like, everything was so well put together from both sides, to be fair, and I thought they executed their plans perfectly. It was just a great 80 minutes of footy, and you almost can't pick anyone out for not having a good game. Even the young props came on and, like, won scrum penalties straight away when there was so many questions around Tamaiti Williams at international level. Like, yeah, it was just outstanding. You could go on for hours. But
Yeah, you're 100%. I agree. No, I don't think any of the side had a bad game. Like, even, like you mentioned, the bench, Anton Leonard-Brown coming on the wing, made some really great reads on D when the All Blacks needed it, because it was like, still, I know I said it in the preview, it was my biggest concern was that All Blacks edge D, and it was still giving me shivers throughout that whole game. I felt like Ireland missed a fair few opportunities to play out the back. I felt like they tried to play the front ball probably a little bit too many times, but I still felt like our edge D, as passive as it was, we did bloody well to scramble. I think Sam Cane came across a couple of times to save the day when they did make a few breaches down there, but you don't want to be giving that many opportunities to the Irish team, but they obviously did. And I mean, that last phase, I think Ireland was so gassed after 37 phases, they'd sort of run out of any zap to get any sort of decent hard line down. But it's a Rugby World Cup world record, 37 phases, 5 minutes 19 ball and play that last phase. So what a way to finish a rugby game. It was absolutely incredible. What do you make of Ireland, Snake?
I think you make a really good point, Jim, in terms of on the edge. Like, New Zealand were, I know you hate it, New Zealand were quite passive on that edge, but they were happy to allow Ireland to sort of throw that. When Ireland did take the opportunities to play at the back and go wide, they were happy to let Ireland have that long, loopy ball over the top and back themselves to connect and recover on the inside. And then all day, like, two things apart from the obvious stuff for the All Blacks that stood out for me was the recovery defense. Like, the scramble defense from the All Blacks was exceptional, and the second thing was the breakdown work. And I think the two guys Searley flagged up, Kane and Ardy, like, 9 times out of 10 on the scramble D recovery or the breakdown, it was one or both of those guys a couple of times. They were just awesome. I don't know how many times I saw Ireland take that long ball to the edge, bend the All Blacks on the edge with that passive D Jimmy's spoken about, and then Sam Cane just flies at someone's inside hip, makes a cover tackle, and someone gets over the ball and either slows it down enough that the All Blacks could rebuild their defense between the 15s or turns it over outright and wins the penalty. Like, those two guys were awesome. And, we expect Ardy to do everything he does week in, week out. But Sam Cane, like, I know he's a guy that, certainly in Europe, it seems like a guy that maybe doesn't get that much love compared to previous All Black captains. For you guys, that might be wrong, but that's definitely the way it's seen over here.
Definitely
And
right.
Yeah.
let me tell you now, anybody that thinks that Sam Cane is not a world-class player is a muppet. That guy is absolutely awesome. And back rows are all about balance. And I know in New Zealand you guys have an abundance of players with unbelievable power, physicality, and razzle, but you can't have three guys all trying to do that in the back row. And what Sam Cane does is he does every single bit of work around the park so that Ardy and whoever you guys decide to play at six, so you've got an abundance of ridiculous sixes, can go and do all the razzle stuff, go and make all the carries. And he's always there blasting out rucks, making cover tackles, slowing ball down to allow the guys to go and do what they do. And I just like, those guys are maybe in the media and the fans don't always appreciate, but you can imagine the guys in the All Black team just love him. Eh? Like, I imagine Ardy Sarvea just must think the world of Sam Cane, because when he plays like that, he lets the rest of the back row and the rest of the pack just go to work and do their maybe more exciting stuff. Fuck, he was awesome, boys.
Mate, you're bang on again. And the last thing I wanted to mention from that game is that the All Blacks line-out success rate for the whole World Cup, not just this game, 51 out of 52. They've only missed one line-out this whole tournament. So that's a massive rap to the Cody Taylors, Dane Coles, Takiahos, the line-out callers, Whitelocks, Retalix, Frizzell at the front, jumping super quick. And obviously Jace Ryan, they've got their line-out plan right intact. I don't want to jinx them at all, but, man, one line-out out of 52. That's incredible, eh, Searley, for a true line-out fan like yourself.
Yeah, obviously love a line out. Not the tallest of timber, but I like to think I can analyze one with the best of them. But just on that point, like, also against the Irish throw, we were doing so well to disrupt them. And there was a couple moments there where they were hot on our line and we still got up and competed and managed to just throw their flow off a little bit. I do wonder if post-game, and hindsight's a great thing, but obviously the Irish turned down a couple shots at goal that we would expect them normally to take. Do wonder if they just felt like they would dominate the All Blacks at that set-piece area, but I thought both our line-out and scrum were all over them. So it was interesting still around that 25, 30-minute mark when we'd already made a nuisance of ourselves at set piece that they were still going for the try. Like, I rate that. That's a real Southern Hemisphere type of mentality. But, of course, Sexton missed one that we assumed he would get, but those other penalties as well, you'd back him all day long. So I do wonder if now, in hindsight, they're thinking maybe we should have taken the three, because the forward pack for New Zealand was so on.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. You sort of forget about that when you look back at the game, but like any one of those kick go over and could have been a different result, like you say. But we'll get to the next game because I think this was a bit of an underrated one of the weekend. England v Fiji, and Snake, you'll be proud of your English boys here. I was really impressed, and especially that first sort of 20, 30 minutes they came to play. They were giving the ball some air. It was nice to see.
Yeah, I think Nick Mullins on ITV on the coverage in the UK summed this game up perfectly in kickoff. He said that there's maybe never been a game in the history of English rugby that they've needed to win more. The last 18 months in English rugby has been terrible, lads. I mean, we've lost four domestic clubs have gone into liquidation. The national performances and results have been at, pretty much an all-time low. Attendances, overall interest, confidence in the game in the UK has taken an absolute bashing. And for the fans, like, just to get some confidence back and some enjoyment back out of rugby, this was such a huge game. The guys would have been under so much pressure going into this. And they got the result done. And like you said, Jim, I thought they were, for the first 20 minutes, I was really, really impressed with how England played. I thought Marcus Smith added a lot to that England backline compared to the Samoa performance. I think I mentioned in the preview, England desperately needed something more in that middle zone between the 22s in their attack shape. And he really adds that as a second ball player. Searley said it in the show last week. He's a bit like Damien McKenzie. He He sees space so well. His instincts are so good. You can see sometimes he doesn't even think about his decision. He just reacts on instinct. And his instincts are so good. And he moves the ball to space quickly. I think sometimes in England we see the space and we go, oh, okay, we'll let the forwards go once more and then we'll get the space. But at international test match level, that extra phase can be enough for defence to recover. He's not like that. He moves the ball straight away when he sees the space. And he's one of the only guys in the England squad who I would say is like genuine triple threat on the ball in terms of run, pass, kick. You look at all the world-class teams, they all have those guys who offer that genuine triple threat, ball in hand. You think of Will Jordan, D-Mac for the All Blacks, Dupont, James Lowe for Ireland, I think is a good example. Valemsa, even at the back for South Africa, like they're guys that, especially when they pick the ball up in the backfield, they can offer that run pass kick, which just makes it so much harder to defend. And in terms of what England needed for Fiji, man, I thought it was a really, really good selection and an aggressive selection for England, which was nice. My concern now is moving forward, and obviously we'll touch on the preview, is can he play for England against South Africa after the sort of contestable kick air raid that they put on France? They had so much success against France, and Marcus Smith's not a specialist fullback. He's not a big guy. And that is where Freddie Stewart's really good. So that's, I think, will be the question in camp and in the English media this week is, can we keep Marcus back there to keep offering more to our attack in that midfield zone?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting. I think they're going to go Freddie because of those points you suggest. But it was good to see Marcus Smith out there. He was tough. He had to be. He was copping. He was getting steamrolled by Radradra, getting high shots from Habossi, and mate, it was good stuff. Good to see how tough the kid was, because you're right, he can play. But in the game, I felt like England were all over them, and then there was just a patch of sort of 5 to 10 minutes where Fiji just go bang, bang, and all of a sudden the game is even again. We're like, holy, okay, here we go. Like, Fiji are on here. They had all the momentum, and then the game got really close. Fiji had a chance to win it at the death, but it looked like they just sort of went right into their shell again. Like, they were just playing off 9. They were playing off no speed. It looked like they were so afraid to lose the game that it ended up costing them. No one was willing to make a risk to make the play. So that fear of failure in the back end of the game, I felt like it cost Fiji. But what do you make of Fiji's performance, Searley?
Yeah, like you mentioned there, I guess, like those pressure points in the game, like the start and then the end, which is where the good teams really stand up. I feel like they went to sleep a little, whereas when the game got into like that flow towards the start of the second half, middle of the second half, they kind of woke up then and played some really good footy. And that's often when teams that struggle on the biggest stages do play their best code, because that isn't the high pressure areas. But I love watching them play. This World Cup's been a massive success for them just to make the quarterfinal. I was gutted to see their coach. He's not coaching them past this year, so he's decided that he's not going to be involved, which is a bit sad, just because I think technically he's been amazing for them, but also in terms of like culture and connection. Like, he took them back to Fiji, and they seem like such a close group. You got guys with family members passing away that are choosing to stay on. Like, obviously they felt that connection to the team as well. So no doubt that job will be in high demand. Maybe a Jimmy Marshall to come in there and help take the lads to another level. But
what about the whole Dance in France preview crew?
There we go. There we go. Snakey can run a fine-tooth comb through their goal-kicking tickers as well.
You can do the line out.
Yeah, that would be massive. Massive.
Yeah.
I was actually proud of England for this one. Like, I feel like it was a game for them where they had everything to lose. Like, everyone was just praying for the upset to get on Fiji and then put that final boot into England. And it's almost like England won, and now everyone's like, you expect England to beat Fiji. And it's like, no, you weren't saying that last week. So I do think we need to give England their flowers, because this is the best they looked for a 60 to 70 minute period. And I genuinely do think that they are a finals footy team, and I think we'll see another lift from them this week. And they're just fueled by the hate, aren't they? Like, every press conference, whoever's up there says, oh, you didn't expect us to be here, and here we are. And you can tell it's really united them as well. So it's going to be interesting this week. But overall takeaway was just well done to Fiji. Maybe a bridge too far, but the growth that they're going to get from this is just massive. And hopefully they're another side, like we mentioned, just need quality, big games. Like imagine them in the Rugby Championship. That would be massive.
Mate, I hope it
Yeah.
does happen because it would be a massive growth for their game. I feel like they're good enough to be there. They've already been in Australia. I think they're always a challenge for the All Blacks and South Africa as well. So, yeah, it would be awesome. Hopefully that can happen. But I do remember speaking about the breakdown in this preview around Botia and how they were how they were rewarded at that breakdown, and I felt like it went either way. Some of them were really clear pictures where he got and they played off him, and some of them they got pinged and really put them under pressure. They were huge momentum swings every time he went for those balls, and I don't think it was really strong one way or the other, and probably hence why the game was so even.
Yeah, they were into him as well, eh? Like you could tell it was part of their game plan. They weren't going to back down to him physically, and every chance they got, they tried to ruffle his feathers. He's not a bloke I would want to take on in a biff, but hey, good on the English. Like I thought Courtney Laws was outstanding as well. Man,
Yeah.
he put his body through the ringer. He's like one of these guys, like he's always been a great footballer, but he's been so in and out, right? And it seems like now he's finally getting the credit he deserves as well, because he's like one of those loose forwards that you could imagine playing in the New Zealand team. He's a great footballer.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys where he's struggled a lot with injury. Like he misses so much of the Premiership season due to injury. But Searley, man, you're right. I flagged up him as the outstanding performer in the game, and he so often is for England. Like I remember the last Lions tour. Like he basically didn't play for 9 months, came in and he was the Lions player of the series. And I
Yeah.
think the England team at the moment, he probably is the one guy who would be in the mix for a World 15. He is our one world class operator, and like I said, he is one of those guys who just often is not in those conversations because he spends 6
Yeah,
months of the
right.
year on the medical table, and it is just
Mm.
the case. But it's part of the way he plays, isn't it? So you can't throw yourself into collisions like that and not expect to have your shoulder glued back on twice a year.
Yeah, and it is hard to believe that England are the last team from the Northern Hemisphere in the Rugby World Cup. So, yeah, well done, Snake. You called it from the start. But we'll get to the next game, France versus South Africa. Wowee, now this was a game. France's start was incredible. What do you make of this one, Searley?
Yeah, after that All Blacks Island game, I thought there's no way another game could come close to this. And if that game didn't exist, then you might well be talking about this France-South Africa game as one of the greatest quarterfinals ever, right? Like, I was just stoked to see South Africa show up in that first 40 and play footy. Like we've said this whole time, they've got some talented backs. They can move the ball, and they weren't afraid to do that. It's like they took on the French Razzle themselves with that starting lineup with Faf and Hondre on the bench. They kind of showed their hand that they were going to play, and geez, that first 40 minutes, like I was messaging all my mates, being like, if you're not watching this game of footy, you need to get in front of a TV ASAP, because it was like you were glued to the seat. It had everything. A charge down, which, look, maybe he did leave early, but maybe we'll get to that. But it was just everything you didn't expect to happen was happening. It was some elite playmaking from both sides. The second half kind of tightened up a bit, and it was more the South Africa you'd come to expect, but it was still bloody interesting to watch as well. And then right down to the last play, you weren't sure who was going to win. The French, I can't work out what they were doing at the end of that game. Like it wasn't, they weren't playing for penalties, but they weren't playing either. Like the ball was going to their props and locks, and they were walking into contact. Like clearly they were gassed, but you just wonder if like an Intermac or someone there, just like one of their elite game drivers, would have got them in the right position. But I think in the end, South Africa deserved to win, and they got the win, but there wasn't a lot between it. And again, we'll touch on DuPont, I'm sure, but man, what a freak. Like, geez, like we've seen some world-class performances over the weekend, and his was second to none. What a footballer.
Yeah, mate, you're so right about that last passage. The French look so gassed. Like you compare that last phase for them and compare it to sort of the first 5 phases where everything was just at such high tempo. They were playing at such fast speeds. DuPont was seeing everything. You're right. That guy's incredible. I don't think anyone has this spatial awareness of where everyone is on the field like he does. For a 9, it's quite a hard skill, because you often thinking about ball first receiver, but his awareness of the backfield and where his wingers are, he's always finding kick space as soon as there's some. Geez, he is so special. Like, his vision is incredible, but their speed, when they play with speed, they're so hard to stop. But you're right, in that those last phases, there wasn't much speed going on. Even DuPont looked gassed. They didn't really throw anything at them. They just had no energy too, which was a shame, because I would have loved to see France go through, especially for the home nation. And I'm sure a lot of people were hoping Ireland were going to go through for sort of the similar reason. It sounds like most of the fans over there are Irish, and an Ireland-France final really probably would have been the organisers' dream. But you can't. No one gets the easy walk through. So obviously, All Blacks. I think All Blacks South Africa. We'll get to that soon. It's all about to happen. But this game was incredible. I was really impressed with South Africa's line speed. I'm a line speed man, and I just thought they put the French under so much pressure. They didn't have the time and space to get it to the edge. Forced heaps of errors, which is pretty uncharacteristic from the French, and created opportunities off it. And a lot of those opportunities also came off their contestable game, like you mentioned, Snake. The French didn't handle that very well, and it probably cost them the game. So what do you make of it, Snake? I haven't even got to you yet.
Yeah, geez, you boys not left me a lot to get stuck into. Searley's pretty much just read off my play sheet. I think
Give us some stats, some analysis. Come on.
Hey boys, look, all I'll say is Rassi's 100% been listening to the pod, because we've been asking for weeks for them to play just a bit more. You know, I'm not expecting them to turn up and throw their DNA out the window and be Ireland or the All Blacks or Fiji, but when they named the team, like, fuck, I was buzzing to watch this game, because they started Kobus and Lebock as the halfbacks. That's an aggressive choice compared to Faf and Hondre, which would have been their other option. So straight away, and then the 5-3 split on the bench as well, which we don't often see South Africa use, which is funny to say, because it's pretty much the standard bench split for most teams. But when that team sheet came out, which was obviously after we recorded last week, because Rassie delayed the team announcement for the first time in the comp. Once that team came out, I thought, they might actually try and do something a bit different here, and they did, like Jim said, especially in the first half. Like, they were pulling the ball out of that first pod and challenging France in that midfield, where the two big Frenchy props often end up, and I think it helped them get a lot of that game line success. But the other thing it did was it split the field, so they broke the midfield portion of the defense, and it gave them the option to hit those bombs and those kicks off 9 to the corners. And like, you guys can say, everyone can say what they want about Rassie, but he has turned this South African team into the most connected and resilient group of players on the planet. Like, in my notes before, I'd written down that South Africa needed a big start to win this game, because they had to kill the French momentum and they had to shut the crowd up. And they had the exact opposite. France had the fucking dream start. And for the first 15, 20 minutes, like, those South African lads on the field would have felt like they were playing against 80,000 people. But it just brings them closer together. And anything that just requires basic work rate and effort, they were better than France in this game. The kick chase was awesome. You spoke about Colby on the charge down. Like, all that is just effort and concentration. It takes no skill. Yeah, he's quick, but there's 3 or 4 guys on the pitch that could make that distance up for both teams. It's just they just, everything that they have to do to win games of rugby from a mentality point of view, they're willing to do for each other. The bench had a massive impact. I thought South Africa's bench was a lot better than France's, but I think South Africa basically win this game because they were the more emotionally mature team in the big moments in the last 20 minutes especially. And I think a lot of that, speaking to guys that I know have been in and around the squads or know guys in the squads, like, that is all down to Rassie. Apparently he's massive on culture, massive on connection and work rate between the guys, and you can see they buy in. Like, you see the footage after the game of them hugging each other, and like, those guys love each other and they love going out and working for each other. And I thought Etzebeth was unbelievable in this game. I mean, every single World Cup, the guy gets better and better. He was absolutely awesome in this game. He was the guy I flagged up as my key performer. Obviously got the try, but set piece time, physicality. Obviously he had his little rest for his HIA, which Jimmy, maybe you can decide whether it was
Whole
pre-planned or
team
not.
did.
You're the coach. What do you think of that? He had his little water break and came back on and started melting people again.
Yeah, very interesting, and it was pretty obvious to me what was going on with their subs. But he's obviously mentioned that he wouldn't ever fake a HIA, but I don't think it had to be an HIA. I think there's definitely plans for fake injuries in that game. Like, you don't bring a reserve hooker on for your captain, and then 10 minutes later, your starting hooker goes down, so you can get on another fresh Lucy. Steph de Toit comes on ready for that last 10 minutes. Obviously, they don't do it every week. They knew that the situation of this game and how important it was. So I just think they've bent the rules or dodgily bent the rules very, very cleverly. That's what I love about Rassi, is that he does do things outside the box. I mean, I don't think you get a bigger dick play than calling a mark off a a scrum off a mark in the 22. Never seen that before. Could have easily backfired. Like he said in his press conference, like, you don't see all these ideas that he has because some of them don't work. But when they do work like that, you're catching a mark in the 22, you're calling a scrum, you get a scrum penalty, and you look like a absolute guru. But man, it is just like something that not many coaches think about. So I think it's really cool to see a coach just being so out the box and out the gate. And yeah, I think he's done an outstanding job with that crew. But what do you think of that? You mentioned Etzebeth there, Snake. What do you think of that intercept / knockdown, which is obviously a big talking point at the moment?
Yeah, there was a few over the weekend, and there's been a couple during the tournament, hasn't there? I don't have issues with the decision either way. I think all that the fans, but more importantly, like the players want, is consistency on these decisions. I know it's a cliche point to make in terms of when you're talking about any refereeing decision, but there has to be a clearer specification set up for what a deliberate knock-on is. Whether they go really harsh and they say, okay, if it's anything with one hand, that's a deliberate knockdown. Or if they can define it in another way, but they have to be more specific on how, less interpretation for the individual referee, because also it protects the referee. If you make the rule clearer, then people can't get stuck into the referees on social media after the game, because the referee can just, say in his match write-up, law 1.17, a deliberate knock-on is when anyone slaps the ball with one hand. And then
the law at the moment is if you're making a genuine attempt to catch the ball. So that
but
would
what's
be the
a
argument.
genuine? What's a genuine attempt though? That's so down to interpretation, don't you think? Because it's basically then the referee has to decide, was he actually trying to catch it? I
think everything's going to come down to interpretation at the end. I quite like the rule as it is. I think the thing with Etzebeth is obviously Ben O'Keefe has ruled that it's gone backwards, which has saved him. Otherwise, it wouldn't have probably been a genuine attempt because he was very loose with his action. Aaron Smith, his one was a bit different because he just stuck his arm out. He wasn't actually looking to catch it. It looked like he was more just looking to get in the passing lane. He wasn't looking to slap it down either. So I'm not sure if that's a yellow card. I think that was just a penalty personally. I thought that was harsh to give him a card. But the Etzebeth one's interesting. Once it's ruled back, it's obviously can't be a deliberate slap down or because it's just play on. So that was a really unique situation, but obviously one which is always going to be controversial for any referee. And I do think one thing on the referees, like I felt like the teams who ended up getting a lot of the results were the ones who were complaining less or less into the referee. I thought the French were all over Ben O'Keefe that game. Every decision, Dupont, which is pretty uncharacteristic for him, was throwing his hands up, shaking his head, slowing his own ball down. There's a lot of energy going towards the referee, and same with the Fijians. I felt like they spent a lot of time complaining, and even hearing them talk, they all feeling sorry for themselves around how they're treated or unconscious bias. I don't think it is unconscious bias. I just think they don't react as well to decisions like others. Like anyone would look at that All Black team. They got a couple of yellow cards, penalty try. I mean, I think that Aaron Smith one was harsh, but the other one was obviously fair. It's part of the rules. If you give away a penalty try, you get a yellow card, which is I still think is a incredibly harsh rule. But what I loved about the All Blacks was just how they handled all these decisions. Looked like they just straight away went on to the next job. No one was complaining, and just had that real next task focus, which I reckon cost a couple of other teams because, like Ben O'Keefe said in his episode, he's probably going to go through the game and he'll find 30 decisions either way that have gone wrong for each side. So I think it's a good mentality. If you go into a game knowing that there's going to be 30 decisions go against you, you just sort of tick them off every bad call instead of getting really wound up about them. So you're going to see on social media probably 30 examples of decisions for each team which could have gone either way, and that's just part of the game, and it's part of refereeing. That's why I'd never want to do it, because these guys are doing an incredible job. They're doing their best, and that's all we can really ask for, because it's such a hard gig. What do you make of that, Searley? The rant.
It's a great call, and the saddest thing, like, obviously Ben O'Keefe got announced for a semi-final, and I went to mention it on my story and just be like, unreal, well done, and he's blocked mentions because that's how much flack he's copping online. Like, it's so sad, right? These guys are just humans doing their job, and of course, when you're on the losing side of the ledger, you're going to look for things that went wrong. Like you said, I put it down to leadership. I reckon Khaleesi, like we spoke about Rassi before, like he's probably the best leader in arguably world sport at the moment, right? The way he talks, every credit after every game he puts back to the country of South Africa. They're doing it for the fans. And I think Rassi made a good point in his press conference yesterday. He said, like, they're like the yin and yang, right? Like, Rassi rattles some feathers pre-game, but then Khaleesi manages everything so well in-game that you can't not like the South Africans. Rassi can almost say whatever he wants in a press conference, and he's incredibly intelligent, and he words it all really well, but he does plant a few seeds, and then you've got Khaleesi on the field just, oh, yes, sir, like agreeing with everything, and the way he handles himself. So, yeah, full credit to the South Africans, and also full credit to Ben O'Keefe. It's awesome to see him get a semi-final this week, because he is one of the top refs in the game, so he deserves it.
I agree, and it's interesting you mentioned that he's blocked mentions, because people were coming at my inbox for obviously having him on the podcast. They're going through all the Ben O'Keefe posts and things on TikTok. French fans were abusing me for some reason, so I felt like I was a referee for half a day after that game. So
in the trenches, Jimmy, the man of the people.
Just copping it for Ben, but anything to take the pressure off that man. Looking forward to it. I hope he has a good game this weekend. I don't want another weekend of copping it, but yeah, good on him for getting another semi-final. And who do you think will referee the final? Obviously, is set up for Barnes if England don't make it, but
yeah, I think it'll be Barnes. I noticed before Russie was talking about this is the fourth time they've had Ben O'Keefe now, and whether that could go in their favour or against them, because he hasn't reffed an English game, so that'll be interesting. But yeah, I think it's going to be Wayne Barnes. That's the ref that I want, to be fair. I reckon like a few people are going on about like a couple calls that he made on the weekend, but I thought he was really good, and it was more his class. TMO trying to get into his ear and convince him that it should have been more. So I think Wayne is probably the best referee in the world at the moment. He just has like an ability to think so slowly in high pressure situations and look at it logically and try, and I think he tries to think like a player and how he would want it to be interpreted. So yeah, I have no problems if it's Wayne Barnes. I think he's the best guy, but obviously England would have to lose for that to happen. So.
Yeah, and I think Wayne Barnes has been the best for the last sort of 8 years. Like his experience, how he handles those pressure moments.
2007, mate. Jesus.
Even that game, like if you go back and watch that game, he did an incredible job. And speaking to all the referees, like he actually managed that game really well. He got one decision wrong, and the country still hates him for it, which is just the life of a referee, which is a shame. But man, what a review, man! That is the most in-depth review we've ever done. So well done, lads. You guys are all on fire. I'll give you a quick update on my fantasy. I know a lot of people love this segment. Some people even fast forward it incredibly, which is a bit sad. But my week in fantasy, I'm up to 151st in the world. So I'm in striking distance now. I didn't feel like I had a great week, but it was a very tough week. Like I mentioned, I didn't think anyone would get over 80 points. Only the French hooker got 80 points exactly. Will Jordan, my captain, got 41, which was about on par with most of the scores across the board. 40-ish was a reasonable score for the round, but this is going to be the week. I'm only up to 9th in the Water Lad League, like I said last week. the guys in front of me are absolute gurus, and using a little bit of copy and paste, which is fair enough. As long as we're all climbing up the world rankings, I'm happy. But this week is going to be the massive one. I'm thinking there's going to be some bigger scores, triple captains on the line this weekend. So as I go through this preview, I will share my thoughts, but there's a guy coming back from suspension who I think will be my triple captain this weekend. You might be able to work that one out, but we'll get to the first game. Semi-finals footy, Argentina versus All Blacks. Didn't expect this to be the matchup at the start of the tournament, but Argentina versus All Blacks. What are you going, Snake?
Uh, unless unless there's red cards, which hey, is a genuine chance. We've seen over the last couple of years early red cards in big test match games of rugby, big finals domestically as well. They do happen. But unless there's red cards, I can't really see any upset in either game this final. I think the ABs I mentioned last week, they're just peaking at the right time. I think they've already got any kind of bad performances, any being undercooked, any low confidence. They got it out of their system before the World Cup against South Africa and in that round one game against France. And now I just think they're cooking on gas. And I don't really see any. In my preview notes, I thought, maybe I can talk about Argentina's set piece. They've got a great set piece, but All Black set piece has been fantastic at the tournament since round one as well. So unless there's a real shocker with a red card or some really bad ill discipline, I don't see where Argentina get into the game.
Well, I even think back to the England-Argentina game at the start of the tournament. England get a red card, and they're still far too good for Argentina. So, it's hard to make a case for Argentina to beat the All Blacks here. I'm not convinced on their D. I think the All Blacks are going to have a bit of a field day out wide. They don't put teams under pressure like South Africa will potentially the following week, which is going to be some challenge. But I do think that All Blacks are going to be far too good in this. I'm thinking 30 points, which is a big call for a semi-final, but I do think will come of this game. And boys will probably get an opportunity to get an early sub and hopefully prepare for the final. But what are you seeing, Searley? I know you're a big Argentina man as well. You love Messi, Pablo.
Yeah, I do love Pablo. I was gutted because, the two players I wanted to see clash in this one, Pablo and Colsey, they're both not in the mix. I would have loved to have seen a repeat. Yeah, definitely tactical. Save the money on the fines to World Rugby. But my only worry coming into this one was perhaps a bit of complacency. Like, obviously, last week, such a big win. And if you rewind the clock back, we beat South Africa last year, probably to save Ian Foster. And then the week after, the boys actually got tripped up by Argentina in Christchurch. So I thought maybe there could be a bit of patternry coming into play there, but hearing the lads speak at the press conference, that's the exact first thing that Dane Coles and Jason Ryan brought up was much like Ireland, we owe these guys one, and it just seems like they're so fueled on that type of mindset at the moment, which I think is really proving really well for this All Black team. So, yeah, I expect us to be too strong as well. I just think we'll have way too many weapons across the paddock, but in a way, I feel like making a semi-final is just a win for Argentina, and I think that's why we saw them react the way they did last week. So, full credit to them. I'd love to see us win by 30. That's my dream for this is 50 minutes, the game's done, we can roll the bench, get D-Mac and Finlay and all those guys on so we can rest those big bodies. We've got a slightly shorter turnaround into this game, so that could prove to be huge, and then we'll get an extra day leading into the final. But Argentina, they're one of those sides we saw on the weekend. If they can get a random try, then they can really kick on from that as well. So, yeah, I'd be saying 13 plus, but maybe more in that kind of 20 zone, because I do expect us to roll the subs and maybe, Argentina score a couple late. But you would like to think that the All Blacks do this one fairly comfortably. It's probably more the process, right? And how they look in doing it rather than the actual contest and the scoreline in a way.
Yeah, I think hearing the boys speak after that game gave me a lot of confidence going into this game, because you're right around potentially taking this one. You're not mentally getting up with the same emotion as you have the last couple, but Obviously, a lot of the group were in the Japan Rugby World Cup where they absolutely annihilated Ireland in one of their best performances. I think it was like 42 points. They put on an absolute clinic, and England weren't playing that well at the time, and then come to the semi-final, just look absolutely shocked with the intensity that England brought to them, and they lost that semi-final. So I think they learned from that, and a lot of the group is still playing. So I don't think they'll be going to this game complacent, and they've named their strongest side that they believe. Obviously, there's a few people who have different opinions, but yeah, I think the All Blacks will be too good. What are you going, Snake? You usually round us up.
Yeah, I think I can see it being New Zealand by 10 to 15, but then a last 20-minute blowout that just changes the whole outlook of the score. I think if it gets to 60 minutes and Argentina are chasing two scores and they have to go after the game and start playing from deep, trying to get the two tries to get themselves back in the game, it can backfire on them and they can get stung. You know, let's say they can see 2, 3 tries in the last couple of minutes. It just changes the whole outlook of the game. It'll definitely be a test match for 50, 60 minutes. I don't think they have the same quality on the bench as the ABs. They don't have the same fitness levels. And although they've improved through the tournament, they haven't improved through the tournament the same level the All Blacks have. The All Blacks now look a different team to the team we saw coming into the tournament. So I just think everything's stacked in New Zealand's favour. And exactly like you boys said, I think the guys in that camp now, I don't have any concerns about complacency here from these guys. I think they've got the bit between their teeth now. And if anything, I think that Ireland game was actually just the opposite. I think it's just fuel on the fire now. Like that Ireland game, if anything, is just going to have them more confident. They'll be believing more in what they're doing, believing more in each other. And I just see New Zealand's performances staying high now for the rest of the tournament.
Nice, I like it. And what do you make of the side, Searley? Obviously, Talaire's back, like I mentioned. Harsh on Leicester, obviously had a great game every time he's put the jersey on. Hasn't even made a spot on the bench. But like I said, I thought Anton made a really good impact coming off the bench as well. But looking forward to seeing Talaire back. Obviously, there's still a lot of calls around Roygaard. Why is Roygaard not playing? And Takiaho comes in for Coles as well. Whitelock gets a start. So there's a few subtle changes, but majority of the group stays the same. What do you make of it? Where's your thoughts?
Yeah, the Talaire one, I think that was the one that I predicted was going to be the one change to the 23. Like you mentioned, there's been a couple adjustments around the bench, but Fozzie's kind of showing that he is a loyal guy and he backs his guys that he picks. And Talaire's started every big game apart from the one on the weekend where he supposedly had a couple too many and paid the price for it. It is harsh on Leicester. I think the way, like you said, Anton's playing, you're either starting on the wing or you're not making the 23. I do wonder as well if Mark is just a little bit better defensively and has a bit of a better aerial game for kick diffusion, and they're looking towards South Africa or Argentina who like to kick the ball as well. So I wonder if they see him as more of that well-rounded player. But I do like what Leicester brings us. He's like a ninth forward. He's a big body. He has the ability to break tackles and things like that as well. But at the same time, Mark has such a high work rate. He's dangerous around rucks as well. He's more that slippery, elusive type of character. And I think overall he's probably earned that spot, and he obviously hasn't done enough wrong by the team to lose it. So I guess you see the mindset there. I wasn't sure if you were alluding to him before as your triple captain, but I reckon he could come out and have a pretty big performance and score a couple tries. And then, yeah, those locks, I guess they're just rotating to keep time off pins for a few of those boys. Like, that was a physical game. They're not the youngest of lads in terms of Brodie and Sam, so I think that's a smart play. And then the hooker one's interesting for me. Maybe Coles has a niggle or something, I'm not too sure, but I thought Dane was really good on the weekend, whereas coming into this tournament, I would have had Taukeiaho in that bench role, sorry. So, I don't know. As a player, if he's not injured, it's probably frustrating for him because you're giving an opportunity for a guy to play their way in. But there's obviously some type of mindset around it, and I'd be predicting Coles to come off the bench in the final.
Mate, I like where your head's at. And yes, it was Mark Talaire who I'm looking to triple captain. It's either him or Will Jordan. I think one of those guys are going to go big. I just need to make sure I get the right guy. And what else I'm doing is my fantasy side is I'm basically using my 5 All Black players that you're allowed all in the back line. I just think it's going to be one of those days for the All Black backs. against this Argentinian D, that they're going to rack up some big scores. So it's going to cost me the likes to get. I'm not going to be able to have Artie, which is
He's a back.
tough because he obviously top scored for the All Blacks in the weekend with 66 points, and even someone like Scott Barrett I'd love to have this weekend, but you're only allowed 5, so I'm going to go the Geordie Rico, Richie, Will Jordan, and Mark Talia combo, and hopefully the All Blacks have an absolute field down the back. So that's where I'm going, fantasy players. Hopefully you enjoy that, and don't copy me. And
yeah, that could be a smoke screen, mate. You could be releasing fake All Black teams here, much like the All Blacks camp is to throw off any scent of some leaks, mate.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to the next game, England versus South Africa. This is where you come in, Snake. What are you going here? I'm interested in your opinion.
Look, boys, in sport, I always love a revenge match narrative. And for England, could this be the 2019 World Cup final revenge match? You're always a chance. You're always a chance, lads, especially in big games. I think there is enough big game experience and key game drivers for England that they are a chance. I was going to say a genuine chance, but they're an outside chance for sure. The issue for England with this matchup is like so many of England's strengths are just neutralized by South Africa's strengths. So I don't, you think of England's strength at the moment, like kicking game, set piece, they go pretty good. Defensively, they're pretty aggressive and physical, but all of those things South Africa do at a world-class level, maybe better. So I'm struggling to see a way that England get in this game, unless we're talking, a red card or something crazy, which I'm not going to write off. But similar to what I said about the ABs, lads, I don't think South Africa are going to be complacent. Like I mentioned, the place that Rassie's got these lads to mentally, like they'll have one goal now, and that's winning the World Cup, and they will 100% be in the mental headspace of ploughing through England to set up a final with what they presume will be the All Blacks. So look, they're a chance. It's a knockout game. I obviously mentioned last week I felt a bit split because I really loved that Fiji team and I wanted them to do well. But this week I'm like, if the boys get this done, I will be buzzing. I will be absolutely over the moon. That World Cup final in 2019 was such a tough watch, especially after that semi-final performance against you lads. It was really, really disappointing. So look, they're a chance. It's knockout rugby, but I am struggling to see an area of the game where England have the upper hand. What do you boys reckon?
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree with everything you say, but I do think that style of footy that both of them are really good at does bring it into a closer match, and then you are relying on a couple of moments. It might be a bounce of a ball, might be a decision, which it always comes down to one or two decisions when you look back at it. So I do think England's ability to just be able to go up in threes and match them potentially at set piece time and physically. So I was impressed with Curry and Earl were into it in the weekend. I feel like they'll be right into the South Africans, and the South Africans won't enjoy that. So I actually had South Africa down by 20, but I feel like I'm talking myself into a much closer game, and it wouldn't surprise me as much if England beat South Africa as it would if Argentina beat the All Blacks. I think this will be a closer match, but I do think realistically South Africa will be too good. But where are you going, Searley?
Yeah, I'm more in that South Africa too good, but not by a lot. I think England are a great finals side, and they always rise to the occasion. And like we said, that the games appear to be quite similar. I'll be interested. I think they'll go with Faf and Andre to start, just because. I don't think you need to fight the French flair straight away. I think they can roll straight into that kind of 10-man kicking game style of rugby and just take England on at that themselves. So I think they'll start with both of those, but I would like to see them razz it up again and play a bit of footy to start with. But yeah, I have South Africa kind of in that I don't know, 10 to 15 margin, maybe a little less, because I do think for 60 odd minutes, this is going to be a heck of a game. It's going to be physical, man. There's going to be some big collisions in those forward packs and through that midfield. So I'm actually excited to watch this game. I do think South Africa will win, but it's more the way that they go about it. And it could take a big toll on them if they get the win here, because there's going to be some bruised bodies. Like, this is the more physical and mentally demanding matchup of the two. I just think South Africa, like, they talk now like they're so united, they're playing for their nation. Like, it doesn't matter who they come up against, they're going to be on mentally. So you'd back them to get the win, but yeah, never write off the English in a finals game. We learnt that lesson, like you mentioned.
Did we what? And a shame Rassie hasn't named his side this week, but shout out to Rassie for naming the English side for us. So it's good to get a little bit of a heads up there. Only changes Stewart to fullback, and yeah, he's a good man. He's hard good case in those press conferences. He's a little bit like Eddie Jones-esque, but obviously getting the results. So, and shout out to Eddie for staying with Australia. Searley, I know your prediction of Stephen Larkham was close, but
it went close. It went close. I noticed there was a couple questions there in the press conference. He just didn't respond to it. It was so good. They were like, "Can you confirm?" He's like, "Yep." And they're like, "So you'll be coaching in 2027?" And he just goes, "Oh." And moves on. I was like, geez, hardly the most convincing. But when you listen to him talk, like, now that it's all happened, right? Like, going young into a World Cup right before the World Cup, not the smartest move. But now when he speaks about it for building towards 2027 and like the state of Australian rugby, he can convince you that it was the right thing to do. So
he's a salesman, isn't he?
Big time. So it's going to be interesting. Like, this next 2 years, I don't know what the odds are for him to make it to 2027. I don't think I believe him. But if he turns this around by, say, 2025, then he looks like a genius. So it could really go either way.
Yeah, bring on 2027. It's going to be interesting to see where they're at. And do they have to qualify now? Because do you have to qualify if you don't make the quarters, or how does it work?
No. I think it's top 3 of the groups go through automatic. I think. Don't hold me to that.
Fair enough. Yeah,
good. Imagine that.
Don't even qualify.
Eddie's issue for the 2027 World Cup, lads, will be if he's got any assistant coaches left. I think that would be his biggest problem. He might get there, but he might have no one to run his pack or his back line.
They're all turning on him, eh? They're all turning on him. The one of them said that his club trainings in Europe is harder than the way Eddie was running them. I was like, holy smokes.
Yeah, right. Interesting times. But, boys, what a preview, what a review. Enjoy this weekend of footy. It's going to be another absolute classic, and I'm looking forward to our final preview show next weekend as hopefully we preview an All Blacks, South Africa, or England for Snake final. So looking forward to it. Appreciate your time as always, lads.
Legends. Cheers, up the ABs.
Say it, Snake.
Up the ABs.